the time. Let's start. So this is our first virtual class for through Brainfit that we are doing, and the main idea for this is to help the students overcome their SAT requirements, help what they want to do in SAT, and this is a class mainly focused on helping the students, high schoolers, people who are ready to take SAT, people who want to take SAT in next 2 years or 3 years, and how they want to achieve their goals and work out on their math subject in particular in SAT, and how to get to a better score out there. The idea behind this whole entire course is that we will do a lot of exercises. We will understand what the requirements are from a student, from anybody who's taking the SAT test. What is it that they want to do, and what are the things that they would be required while they are taking these tests, and how they can overcome the challenges, how they can overcome the problems that they would face during taking the test or even preparing for the test. I will be sharing a lot of tips and tricks during the entire course, even today, helping the kids understand how they can reach up to a very optimal, very good, you would say, a wonderful score at the end of the day. Hi, Vitun, welcome. So let me start sharing my screen. Just please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
Yes, we can see.
Awesome. So what we are going to do is we'll just go through a couple of points, what I understand that we are looking at from the SAT. From what we understand is that most of all our high schoolers, they face two challenges. One is the SAT exam, which they require to get into the college, as well as the ACT exams, which help them to get more exposure and get a better score, as well as credits towards their college courses. If they show that they are better in ACT exams, if they have taken the ACT math exams or ACT subject tests, they get better credits, or they can qualify for certain courses in the college that they usually would not be able to. So for Brainfit, from the perspective of Brainfit, we are targeting all your requirements, what you would need from the math perspective. I know math can be challenging, but that is the idea behind these classes, that we will make sure that we will work with you as much possible so that math is not a big problem for you, as well as you will be able to understand what you need to do, how you need to identify the problems, the patterns, the questions, and how you solve those, and how you apply math going forward. So in SAT, if we would notice, the SAT exam in all is actually, SAT exam is actually broken out into 4 different sections: reading, writing, math test with the calculate, and without the calculate. There was a essay optional, there was a section for essays. However, as of June 2021, the essays have been taken away. No more students, any participant who wants to apply for SAT going forward, essay is not a requirement anymore. SAT College Board is not even offering essay as a test anymore. So yes, this has been taken away. However, essay is still a very much part of your common application, as well as any other application that the colleges might require you to file. Essay is very important. Reason for that is it helps you bring out your story to the college board, to the admissions counselors, to the deans, to the proctors, anybody who's looking at giving you an admission. They would want to know who you are, what is your story, what do you actually tend to achieve, what do you want to do, and that is why essays is still more important, even though it is not a part of a city anymore. I do want to touch upon a little bit about reading. In terms of reading, as we know, there are about 52 multiple choice questions. You will be given 65 minutes to do those. There will be passages, and the only way to improve upon it is that you do a lot of practice. Unfortunately, from the Brainfit perspective, I would be mostly focusing on the math area, which also requires a lot of practice, but there are a lot of wonderful ideas available, a lot of good resources available that you can utilize to help with your SAT reading aspect. SAT reading, writing, and language. Writing and language, again, I was asked by a couple of students earlier, does it require that you have to write? No, you are not expected to write during your SAT exam. What is expected is that they will be giving you sentences in which they will mark different sections of those sentences, which are, and in the all different options, A, B, C, and D, they would ask which of the options, which of the part of the sentence is incorrect, or if you were to rewrite that part, how would you rewrite that? SAT math. Now, here comes the interesting topic, which we are all here for. SAT math is my favorite topic. This is the area that we want to focus upon from Brainfit perspective. And this is the area that I would want to get involved with you to help you understand the issues, the patterns, the solutions, the approaches, and leading towards your scores getting higher and higher. Now, the math questions are basically divided into two parts. It is two different tests that you would be taking. One would be the calculator section, and the other would be non-calculator section. The non-calculator section only has just 20 questions, but it has 25-minute limit, which actually brings you out to almost 1 minute per question, approximately. That is the limit that you have been given, hence, which means that you have to be really fast at solving those questions. And you can only be fast at solving those questions by understanding the pattern, understanding how these questions are, and you would be able to do so. The more you practice, the better you understand. The calculator permitted section has about 38 questions with 55-minute limit. Again, it's not a whole lot of time. It's less than 2 minutes. It's more than 1 minute, but it is about less than 2 minute limit per question as well. And trust me, calculator is only an option. Calculator is not something that is going to solve the question for you. Calculator is only going to help you get to the answer. Calculator is not going to solve the question. Solving the question still resides on you, how you want to solve the question, right? Now, if we look at the math test in all, there are actually 4 main subtopics within math that are required. One is known as the heart of algebra. Second would be problem solving and data analysis. Third would be the the passport to advanced mathematics, which actually involves a lot more of quadratic equations, exponentials, a little bit of rational expressions, and sometime it may even ask some things about graphs or polynomial factors. It is all about factorization, a little bit of algebra. Trust me, heart of algebra is where the chunk of math involved. Rest everything just follows in. The additional topics, the 4th pillar of this entire thing, is actually the additional topics, which requires geometry, complex numbers, right angle trigonometry, and a little bit of circle equations in the coordinate geometry. So the coordinate geometry is also required for SAT, even though most of the time you would be just required to understand how the X and Y coordinates work, or the lines, or maybe the XY plane. There is no three-dimensional geometry involved into all this, no three-dimensional coordinate geometry, and neither a lot of circles are involved. Mostly what is involved is the triangles and a little bit of circles, yes. Complex numbers, yes, you must understand what the complex numbers are, how they operate, what is radical I, and how do you identify where the radicals are going to be. But your additional topics are limited only to that. All in all, SAT actually looks at, a majority of SAT exams are looking at your math knowledge up to the 10th grade, not beyond that. Anything that you're learning in 11th grade or 12th grade is only an add-on. It's credibility to you, how you will solve the problems going forward. But if you understand your math up till the 10th grade, you should be able to do anything that is being asked in the SAT exams. If we see the heart of algebra, it has about 19 or 58 questions, which is approximately 32.8%. Yeah, it's a 30% more than 25%, but still it's not 50%. But trust me, heart of algebra is actually, it is the heart of SAT. It's all three, whether it's heart of algebra, whether it's passport to advanced mathematics or additional topics, algebra is everywhere. It's only in the problem solving and the data analysis, that's where you would be talked about drawing the histograms, line graphs, understanding the linears and the exponential growths, understanding how the data is arranged in Venn diagrams, set theory, and all that stuff, and that would be it. You can talk about a little bit of arithmetic also being involved into the data analysis portion. That is what would be required. Okay. Now, going forward, what I would recommend is what I have seen, what has worked with other students, and what I recommend in most of my students going forward would be, what should be your pattern? How would you want to study? So some of the steps that I would suggest is that, most importantly, you must understand and memorize the math content, the formulas, and the facts. There are certain things like, what is an integer, what's a real number, what is a complex number, what are the values of pi. Such things will never change. What's a line, what's an array, what is a vector? These things will never change. They will remain as they are. I do understand that at the start of the SAT exam, they do give you certain formulas. They will give you the formulas for finding the area or the, you can say the volume of certain shapes, but still you are expected to understand what would be the formula for a line. Like, how would you write a line in an XY plane? If a line is given to you in the form of y is equal to mx plus c, what does m stands for? What does c stands for? What's your x-intercept? What's your y-intercept? You're supposed to understand. So you must understand those. You must remember those. That's a very, very, very important point. The next important thing I recommend, and I enforce upon all the students, would be take timed practice tests. You must take tests. It is not that you will all of a sudden, when you go into the SAT exam on that particular day, you would be able to do everything, unless until you have been practicing. Nobody becomes perfect without a practice. So we have to do a lot of practice tests. We do practice tests, we time ourselves. Even if I cannot sit for 3 hours straight every time, I may be doing a test for, say, 30 minutes. I take up 25 questions, I do it for 30 minutes, and I see how many did I do right and how many did I do wrong, or what did I pass. There are certain questions that I may not have even answered. And why was that? Was it taking too long? Was it making me think, which I was not able to identify in within that 1 minute that is allotted to me? Probably. So these are certain things that you would identify the more time tests you would take. The more times, the more tests you take, the more time you get to analyze where you went wrong. And the more analysis you would do to understand what went right and what went wrong, obviously, it helps you to retry those missing the problems that you missed, the mistakes that you made, you would be able to understand those so that in the next test, you will not be doing those mistakes again and again. You must space out your practices as well. Like, I mean that you just finished a practice test, you took a test from 11 to 11:30, and at 12 o'clock, you again want to take another test. No. Just like any other muscle in your body, your brain also gets tired. It gets stressed out. So every time you do your test, give your brain a little break, do something else. I would recommend take a walk outside or go out, water the plants, do something else. Maybe you want to eat something, you want to talk to your parents, your friends, anybody, do that. Come back after some time and again take another test. But try to make a little bit difference in between those tests. Secondly, if you're taking long duration tests, do not do that 2 tests in the same day. Try to do 1 test today, give a break for another day, give another test day after the next. So this way you are giving 1 day to 2 days gap in every test. This way, what you're doing is not only you're taking the test, you're understanding it, and you're letting your brain also to handle the thing and take the test accordingly, right? Another reason for this also thing is most of the times you will see starting the pattern that, oh, the questions get repeated. These are all practice tests. They will have certain questions that may get repeated. If you're doing test after test after test, you would start observing those patterns. And if you're not leaving much distance in between those tests, what is going to happen is but actually your SAT exam would happen at a much later date, right? So whatever trend that you're following, you're seeing that, oh, I'm getting 1550. All of a sudden, for 5 tests I did in the last 2 days, I got 1550. But when you go to take the SAT exam, which is almost like a day, 2 days later, by then your brain would have cooled down and you would not be able to get the same scores anymore, right? You need to get good grades, but you need to be consistent in those grades as well. You need to train your brain just like you train your body, how to speed up, when to slow down, and how to maintain the consistency, right? I do understand that we have a lot of kids who would be in their 11th grade, who would be completing their 11th grade, going into 12th grade, and they have you can say they have much short time to go ahead and give the SAT exam. In such a case, I also provide a small, you can say, an 8-week study approach, like start from any of the weeks now. Start from a Monday. How do you approach your SAT exam? Say you want to give your SAT exam at the end of the 8th week. Now, what you would want to study on which day? And I try to come up with a simple framework like that. So how would you want to do that? I would want you to review your process, review your chapters on one day, give an assessment test on the very next day. Again, try to attempt those assessments a couple of times so that until you start getting perfect out there. Perfection to different people may mean different. For me, it means 40 out of 40, but for somebody, it may actually mean 38 out of 40, which is perfectly fine as long as whatever scores that you are going to get, as long as you are scoring anything above 32, 33, and you are consistent with that, I am fine with it. Okay. So I would suggest that you have to have a study plan. You cannot do anything without your study plan. You must have a study plan. There are topics that you should be noting down, and you must be taking a lot of tests on every other day, every other week to start with, when you're starting, every week you must be taking a full-fledged test. At the same time, you must be doing timed online practice tests, either online or written down. Online is good because ultimately you would be doing a SAT, which is also online. If you're doing a paper-based test, all good. I will provide you a lot of tests that you can print out and start doing paper-based tests. Or if you want to do online tests, the same question paper that I would be providing you, it would be there in front of you on your computer. You can look at that, write it on a piece of paper, or start marking online as well. Once you're done, send the question paper and your answer sheet back to me. I will grade it. I will let you know the areas where you're doing good, the areas where you need more help, the areas that you just need to maintain. So we would work on all those areas. Every Saturday, you must do a practice test. And on Sundays, you must take a full-fledged test to start with. Now, as you would see on my sheet, when I start doing this, getting down to week number 7, which is actually the second to last week, you need to have more and more test every day. And then starting from Sunday all the way to your final SAT exam, you have to do full-fledged tests almost every day. Just a day before, I would say cool down, because then your brain needs to think a little bit. So let it settle down, and then you would have the best performance of your brain on your SAT exam. This is one of the good study approaches that we have seen in the crunch time. It works very well. Please do that. Okay. Now, as I said earlier, the SAT math and the calculator section, as well as the non-calculator section, most of the math problems you can do without the calculator. Calculator is just for you to save some time to do those calculations for you, but calculator is not going to solve your problems. You need to understand what the problem is. You need to be able to work out almost all the steps beforehand, maybe on a piece of paper. That's the reason for my class, I don't encourage the use of a calculator. However, it is permitted. You can use it, but I would recommend use it only towards the last step of your solution. Do not start approximations at the very start of the questions. All right, so that was pretty much about some of the presentation that I wanted to share. And apart from that, what I also wanted to share was I would want to go through some of the questions, some of the things that we had put together earlier, and I wanted to share with you. Something like, let's say if you have been given a quadratic equation. Now, a quadratic equation can be provided in multiple different forms. Let me share some of the forms that I want to talk about. And okay, so here we are. I will share a couple of quadratic equations. So some of the quadratic equations, they can be written in multiple different formats, and any of these formats can be provided for you in the exam as well. What we need to understand is what are the different forms of a quadratic equation. It could be y is equal to ax squared plus b, x plus c. As soon as you see the highest power of x as 2, it's a quadratic equation. Now, the same equation can also be provided into a different format, which could be the second format which we have, y is equal to a times x minus r1 or x minus r2. When we get an equation in this format, it's very simple, it's very easy. We already know that r1 and r2 would be the roots. Why? Because at the point when y becomes 0, a does not matter anything because it's just the multiple. We can get rid of that. and either x minus r1 could be 0 or x minus r2 could be the 0. In case of a vertex form, and I know a lot of you kids are very familiar with drawing the graphs, understanding what the vertex are. Whenever you're drawing a quadratic equation, it forms like there has to be either a trough or a crescent at the very top. So there has to be a vertex for that. And the vertex format would be y is equal to a times x minus h, the whole squared plus k. Whereas k and h, they form the coordinates of that particular vertex. Now, what if h was 0? Then you would have y is equal to k, ax squared plus k. That is one of the very simple quadratic equations. Quadratic equations play a very important role in your exam. Reason for that, they can be given to you in terms of solving an equation, solving number of roots of an equation, or they can also be given in terms of a graph, and you are supposed to point out where those y-intercepts or those vertices are. Quadratic equations also, they are very interesting quadratic equation. The reason for that is, I would say, if you were to find the x-intercept or the y-intercept, we can get back to that. The most important thing, I would say, yes, the formula for quadratic equation is x is equal to minus b plus minus b squared minus 4ac root full divided by 2a. This equation is a very interesting equation. Now, why is this very interesting? If a quadratic equation can be written in a form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, you can actually reduce any quadratic equation into this particular format. A could be something, b could be something else. Try to have the signs positive, which would mean the b could be negative, or a could be negative, or c could be negative. It could be anything, or c could be combination of numbers, whatever. As long as you can deduce a quadratic equation into this format, you will have a discriminant, which is b squared minus 4ac, which is part of the square root. Now, this is very important. If b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, equation has only one real solution. Why? Because equation is a perfect quadratic equation. It is a perfect square of some number. Very easy. If b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, which means it's a positive number, b squared minus 4ac is a positive number, which means b squared is greater than 4ac, hence a root is possible. If the root is possible, then x will have real solutions. It could have 1, it could have 2, it could have any number of solutions. A quadratic equation can have only 2 solutions, so it will have 1 or 2 solutions. But if b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, that means b squared is less than 4ac, which is actually under the root value is becoming a negative value. Hence, it would have 2 imaginary solutions, which is leading towards the complex numbers. Complex numbers is root of minus 1. When I take out 1 outside, so root of minus 1 becomes I. That's the complex number. That's the simplest complex number that we know, and that's where we get into those solutions. So quadratic equations are very important. Coming down to your exams again, trust me, SAT is not trying to test how much you know. SAT wants to test how do you work when you are under pressure. The math is not very tough. It's only up till class 10th, not more than that. And you are much more smarter than that. You know that you are smarter. What you do not know is how you would perform when you are under pressure. And that is where the practice comes into picture. We do, as part of Brainfit, we give out worksheets almost every week. We do multiple worksheets. I have worksheets on all the different topics within math. We will focus on each and every corner, whether it's coordinate geometry or it's complex numbers or it's linear algebra or it's ratios and proportions. We will work on each and every topic, and we will do a lot of tests. With these, we will see how we are proceeding forward. While solving questions, you would see, particularly when it's a multiple choice questions, you would see sometimes it's not actually required to solve the entire question. All you have to do is look at what are the different options available. Some of the options will make more sense. And the moment you see some of the options making more sense, that's it. You have to solve only for those. You don't need to solve the question completely. Sometimes you can actually look at the options and do a negative scaling on those questions. Negative scaling means rule out which of the options will not make any sense. Now, I do see that there is a x plus something, or it's an algebraic equation of a single order, or maybe second order. And there is a solution that is provided, maybe a negative or x cube was provided, a negative answer was provided, which is wrong. It cannot be a negative. If it cannot be negative, you just have to disregard those particular options. And hence, your solution, your solutions, your calculations will become even more simpler. Other important thing, do not approximate or do not use approximations until you get to the very last step in your math problem. You should try to do as much math problem in terms of the variables, remove those variables, simplify the fractions as much possible so that your calculation has to be very small numbers. I prefer to factorize even the larger numbers into smaller numbers so that you can take out all the commons. If it's a fraction, if there are common numbers which are in numerator as well as in denominator, common multiples, remove those. The simplest form is actually the best form for any kind of calculations. You would have smaller numbers, you would run into much smaller problems, and you would be able to solve your questions faster. And that is the intent of doing SAT. Let me also touch upon one very important question. I know we have just 5 more minutes for this class today. So couple of people asked me recently that as of this year, in fact, it started last year, as of this year in particular, a lot of colleges today have said that SAT is becoming optional. Colleges do not want to look at the SAT scores, or rather they say, okay, it's not a compulsory requirement. If you provide it, it's great. If you don't provide it, okay, that's fine. Why should we invest into SAT now? Why should students go through SAT exam when the colleges say the SAT exam is optional? Yes, very good question. SAT exam is optional for many colleges, but it will be optional going forward. We do not know. It may be a requirement. It may be a situation that was in the last 2 years due to the pandemic, when a lot of SAT test chapters, test exam halls, or test taking centers were not available, and a lot of kids had to go through a lot of problems to write the SAT exam. That may be one of the reasons why they had to take it off. Now, think about it. If we take away the SAT exam, what is the differentiation factor between you and your colleagues or your classmates? You all may be wonderful. In your high school itself, you would have about 300 students who are passing out of, say, the 12th grade this year. I know there are much more numbers, but let's say just 300 numbers. You want to go to a class, you want to go to a college, whereas the college only has 100 seat capacity. The college cannot take all 300 students. What would happen at that time? Which 200 students will the college reject, or rather which 100 students will the college accept? Eventually, what would happen? People will try to pay more, or people will try to do something else. They might want to get more extracurriculars or co-curriculars. Yes, that is an important thing. Co-curriculars are very important. You need to have an all-round personality, but still the college has to decide where exactly they can choose one person over the other. And that is why SAT exams or your academic marks will come into picture. It may be an experimental basis. They may have removed it. It might come back. It might come back in a different fashion. It might come back in a different format altogether. So I would, in my perspective, I would recommend never lose the sight of the SAT exam. Be prepared and do your best. Preparation is all what we do here at Brainfit. We will make sure that you are prepared. We will make sure we are helping you as much possible. And any questions now? I think we are coming to the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, please email me or reach back out to me. You can follow me on my Facebook account as well as my email ID would be brainfit@gmail.com. You can email me or send me any questions, and I would be more than happy to respond back. All right. Thank you all. Thanks for joining, and take care. Bye-bye.